breakthroughs and discoveries being made every day. It has made it possible to diagnose and treat complex medical conditions with greater accuracy and precision, resulting in better patient outcomes. Therefore, it has become a nascent topic that must be discussed and deliberated upon. Today, our esteemed panel of experts and luminaries will be sharing their insights and experiences on various topics, including the role of medical technology in enhancing patient care, the challenges and the opportunities in the industry, and the future prospects of the rapidly evolving field. Again, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all speakers and the participants for taking their time out to be part of this event. Your presence and contribution will undoubtedly make this webinar a valuable learning experience for everyone. Once again, welcome to this webinar. Let me start by introducing our panelists. Firstly, let me start with Gaurav Parchani. Mr. Parchani is the co-founder and CTO of DOSI. Prior to his current role, Gaurav was working at Altair Engineering. He is a BTech from IIT Indore. He has been featured in the Forbes 30 under 30 class of 2021 for the innovative MedTech company. Then we have Mr. Mudit Dandwate. Now, Mr. Dandwate is also the co-founder, but the CEO of DOSI. Prior to his current role, Mudit was working at Altair Engineering. As you can guess, both of them were working at a common place, and I guess before the startup bug bit them. He has completed his mechanical engineering degree from IIT Bombay. He has been featured in the Forbes 30 under 30 class of 21 for the innovative MedTech company. Then we have Miss Claire Picard. Miss Claire is of counsel in Denton's Paris office, concentrates on national and international litigation, liability law, and distribution law. Claire advises clients from various sectors, ranging from pharmaceutical laboratories to pharmaceutical consumer product manufacturers and distributors, including clothing companies, to foreign judicial trustees and judicial representatives. Claire is also active in cross-border disputes, comprising multiple proceedings in different states, and represents foreign companies before French courts, as well as foreign judicial authorities, aiming to obtain recognition of foreign judgments in France. Then we have Mr. Suhas Bendre. Mr. Bendre is currently working as a Senior Vice President, Regulatory Operation for HSBC India. He's a qualified chartered accountant, and he's been with HSBC since 2011. What is not known about his resume, he's the go-to person for all consultants insofar as regulatory issues is concerned. The law firms hold him in very, very high regard because he's come to their rescue not once, but umpteen times. So we're very lucky to have Mr. Suhas Bendre today, taking his time out to speak on this webinar. And last not the least, Mr. Pradesh Varke. Pradesh is the associate partner of and also one of the practice heads of the healthcare and life science practice of Link Legal, with over 16 years of industry experience. Before Link Legal, he was a senior legal counsel at Medtronic for India and subcontinent, which included Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bhutan. He's been instrumental in setting up Bangladesh Medtronic legal entity and many strategic business models and transactions. Before I hand it over to Prajnesh, who would be moderating this session, I thought it would be useful to also give the participants a little look at the data points insofar as medical devices are concerned, industry is concerned in India. Today, we have the type of medical devices in India is over 6,000. There are 250 medical startups in India, which includes our panelist DOSI here. India is the largest Asian medical devices market after Japan, China, and South Korea, and among the top 20 medical devices markets globally. According to International Biomedical Equipment Federation, India's medical equipment market is world's 22nd largest, but growing in huge numbers. The India Brand Equity Foundation reports that the medical equipment market in India is projected to grow from 10.3 billion in 20 to 50 billion by 25. Today, 100% FDI, foreign direct investment, is permitted in both brownfield and greenfield projects. But of course, we'll hear more of that. Without much ado, let me hand it over to Pradnesh. We have just about an hour, but we'll try to make it as interactive as possible. Over to you, Pradnesh. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nusrat. Thank you. And again, just welcome everyone. We have two parts to this session. In the first part of the session, we will talk about innovation of medical technologies and global expansion of the companies who are innovating into the MedTech sector. And the second part, we will address one of the apprehensions in adoption of medical technologies, which is medical negligence. And what is the medical negligence liability? Okay, so welcome everyone, and I initiate this first part of the discussions for this webinar. I would like to ask my first question to Mr. Gaurav Parchani, that in today's scenario, technology is growing faster and overcoming the legacy ways of healthcare delivery. What do you think is the impact of TOSI medical devices on patient outcome in the healthcare industry?
Thanks, Pradnesh and Links Legal for the opportunity. And I think it's a very relevant question today when we look at the condition of our healthcare industry, not just in India, but globally. The trends are pretty clear that we have a very low ratio of healthcare professionals to patients. And when it comes to the resources that are required, we are quite low on them. DOSI is India's first remote continuous contactless remote patient monitor and an early warning system. What we've essentially done is we've changed the concept of monitoring beyond the ICUs. Today in our country, because we don't have enough nursing staff and nursing power, we have to settle with spot checks, which are done 4 to 6 times a day to monitor a patient's health and their status, right? And because of large unavailability of cost for traditional monitoring equipment and the nursing power required to actually consume that amount of information and that use those monitors as well. So there is a definite need to revamp patient monitoring outside the ICUs because we want to take quality care beyond the ICUs as well. And today, if you look at it, in our country, we have 20 lakh or 2 million hospital beds. Out of that, only 5% are ICU. The rest, 1.9 million beds, are outside the ICU. So making sure that they have the best-in-class standard monitoring with an early warning system that raises alerts to the nursing staff in time so that an intervention can potentially save lives and actually impact better patient outcomes. While doing so, it will also reduce the burden on the nursing staff by automating the manual processes of spot check, right, which consumes almost 2 to 3 hours of nursing day. 80% of it can actually be wiped out because of automation and digitization of automation of all of this data, with not just 4 values a day, but minute by minute readings in terms of vitals. So multiple hospitals. So we are present with like almost 350 plus hospitals, 8,000 beds, and multiple hospitals have reported better patient outcomes, catching these health deterioration signs earlier on, transferring the patients to ICUs faster, or giving intervention there and there itself in the required amount of time to prevent any sort of escalation and have better patient outcome. At the same time, controlling the efficiency and reducing the burden on the nursing staff so that they can tend to the care aspect of it, which in turn also leads to better patient outcomes when that happens.
So thank you, Gaurav. It's a very interesting answer, and I think there are a lot of new innovations which are going to hit the healthcare industry soon from TOSI. To get all our participants also engaged into this webinar, we have some poll questions, which I would like all the participants who are attending this webinar. So first poll question is, I think, already on the screen. First, there are 2 poll questions which you can address. I would like to request all the participants to probably give their answers to it, and maybe the panelists can respond to some of it at the end of the webinar. So from Gaurav, I would like to move on to Mudit. So Mudit, now that we've heard on the technical side on the product and the impact of the new innovations from Gaurav, I want to know something from you on the business side, right? So what do you think DOS's perspective in the Indian and international markets? And what are the challenges do you perceive when you do your expansion? So let us know what are your challenges probably in India, what domestically you're facing in terms of, and how you are overcoming those challenges, and how do you look at the international market? In the
Got
current
it.
scenario that
Yeah,
we are looking at creating India as a MedTech hub.
Correct. No, thanks a lot, and for this wonderful opportunity. It's always harder to speak after Gaurav. He leaves little to be spoken. But covering the business aspect of it, I'll start with India first, right? So in India, as Gaurav mentioned, that we are currently in close to about 350 hospitals across India, and these are the variety of hospitals, right, from corporate to tier 1 hospital, and even in tier 2 towns as well. Moving ahead, now that have established kind of a product market fit in this entire scenario, and this entire new prerogative that we are pitching for some time now has become something which is accepted by the market, which is every bed outside the ICU should also be monitored, right? And that's where our entire her bed dozy bed campaign comes in, that we are living in 21st century, and while we are monitoring data of every other thing, including car ka tire pressure is how it is running and so on. But when it comes to monitoring data of patient, it is restricted pretty much to ICUs, right? So why is that the case? And it should be in every bed. That's the idea. And now this year and in the coming year, we are planning to expand this to close to about 2,000 hospitals across India, in about 40 cities all across, and even in the tier 2 towns as well. So that is what we are looking after, and also to expand this beyond hospitals as well. As in, there is a plethora of patients who are outside hospital, but still they are in high risk condition and required to manage their health in a day-to-day basis. Right, these are patients from oncology, neurology, and so on, right, who are at home and can also benefit with a technology like Dozy, right? So that is something that we are also working on and looking to launch it soon. When you talked about challenges, one of the biggest one is actually awareness of a technology like this, that there is a need. As Gaurav also mentioned, nursing workload is something which is not just India's problem, but globally it's a huge problem. We keep on reading news about how the prices are going up around the nursing, how the shortages are hitting different parts of the world, and including even in India as well. But at the same time, the solution as such is not known, that there exists a technological solution to it. So creating that kind of awareness is one of the biggest challenges. The other one is the understanding of different medical legal aspects of this, right? That's where I think, Pradnesh, we are also working together as well, right? That how using technology like this, you actually can improve patient safety, and that's why it is in a step in the right direction, right? And that is the myth that we are also trying to bust together as well, right? So I think those are two major challenges in India. Globally, we are now, now that Dozy's flagship product, Dozy VS, is also FDA cleared as well. We are looking to expand beyond India as well. We are looking at US, we are looking at Africa also, right, in this sector. And we are going to achieve our, healthcare is a very local subject. So we have to, kind of redo our entire product market within the entire geography. But that's the kind of, exercises we are going to do this year to ensure that, Dozy becomes a global company as well in the times to come.
Thank you, Mudit. I think that's a very good perspective to look into. And looking at good Indian companies, innovating, so highly innovating, and also looking at the global market, I think it really encourages us. And with that aspect in mind, apart from the business challenges, when we are trying to look into expansion into, say, global markets, right? What is important is also to understand the law of the land, right? And how Indian government, or the regulatory framework, the banking side, is helping a lot of these startups or companies, to move outside or to invest outside. With that perspective, I'd like to welcome Mr. Suhas Bendre. And try and understand from him that, companies like Dozy who intend to invest outside India, or, who want to expand outside India, can, what are the RBI or some banking regulatory framework, which they should understand, or, which can help them, when they're making these expansion plans, what should be the considerations?
Yeah, thanks, Pragnesh, for the opportunity. And talking about regulation around expanding business globally, there are two modes available to companies. Mode one is you set up your branch office abroad. So legally, entity remain one and the same. Entity doesn't, it's not a new entity incorporated versus a branch office. You can do sale through branch office. And the benefit of branch office is you don't require any RBI approval. There is no reporting to RBI. And it is only an approval from authority in the bank. The flip side of the branch office is ultimately it is your Indian entity who is booking the business overseas. So taxation angle one need to look into. So secondly, branch office cannot borrow overseas, and branch office cannot invest overseas. Those two are restrictions for a branch office. So there is a branch office model has positives and negatives. The other model is subsidiary, forming a subsidiary abroad. The subsidiary can be directly formed as an operating company or formed through a holding company structure. You can have a holding company in one jurisdiction, and that company can have operating company. A subsidiary, you can invest up to 4 times your net worth as on last audited balance sheet, and you can have a loan overseas. We can have guarantees overseas. No, like what are the restrictions for branch office? Those are not there for subsidiary. But only thing here, again, the key difference: subsidiary cash to be repatriated to India will be in the form of dividend or capital reduction, whereas the branch cash to be repatriated to India, it will be from left pocket to right pocket. It is your own entity. It is your. So there are pluses and minuses there. RBI's process for setting up a subsidiary is automatic route, where you just need to fill up the form FC and submit it to the bank. A bank submits the form on the RBI portal, and something called unique identification number (UIN) is generated automatically as auto generation. It is. So it is easy to do business subsidiary as well as branch office, but there are nuances of both. Yeah. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Suhas. It's a great insight, and I think there are good things on the regulatory front also to be considered for companies who need to expand. I think the other interesting aspect is when you think of expansion, you think of other jurisdictions, you think of other countries, and there are different laws and regulatory systems which need to be, overcome, or you need to fit into those when you start your businesses out there. So with that perspective, I really want to welcome Claire Picard, who is from Dentons Paris, as an off-consul of Dentons Paris. And, Claire, I would like to ask one question. The way, Indian government is now pushing these startups or setting up these medical device, parks, and helping Indian startups to move into, to manufacture more, or to encourage these environment. So I wanted to understand from you, how can the government support the development of a robust medical technology ecosystem? And what role can the industry play in contributing to the growth of the healthcare sector in the country? So if you could give some of your European perspective of how French government, has encouraged, we would probably, have some insights.
Thank you very much, Pradnesh, for giving me the occasion to represent the specificities of the European and French. You hear me well? Yes? Okay. And the French medical device sector. So the first thing to know is that it is very much regulated sector, one of the most regulated sector, with many European rules and many local rules. And to give an example, when we speak of medical device, in fact, we do have 4 different categories of medical device, from the most dangerous ones that usually would be implemented medical device to the less dangerous ones that could be, for example, bandage, a bandage would be considered a medical device in Europe. The latest trend of the European and French markets is an increase in the applicable regulation. So the regulation mainly deals with safety issues, and the most recent one in 2016 that must be implemented all over Europe in 23 is a increase requirement in the regulation, in the safety and the certification of the devices, putting the authorities at high pressure, because they are now receiving hundreds of thousands of requests for certification of medical device that have been on the market for several years now. So this is one of the main issues to be informed of when you want to enter the European or French markets. The other important element is to know that pricing is also regulated, meaning that when you put on the market a medical device and you want it to be used and reimbursed, the reimbursement by the Social Security of the several states means that the state has its say in the pricing. So a medical device company will need to go through several steps with the authorities to be able to claim how its product is best or increases the safety or the medical interests compared to other, in order to try to get the best price it can hope for. And this also takes several years. It is said consequently that as high as 40% of the medical device companies would not go up until the final procedure because it is too long, and the revenues that one may expect from the marketing of the medical device come too late to allow MedTech and startups to continue to be financed up until the last phase of the marketing of a new project. So in this consideration, what can the state and what can the health sector do? So many incentives have been put in place. In particular, with regard to France, for example, in 2023, the French president announced that it would support the medical industry by 2 big plans for several billions of euros. And the share for medical device is quite important because it's up to 400 million euros that will be injected in the medical sector in France, in particular with regard to biotech and with regard to anything that has to do with the surgical robots, for example, and also to ensure the safety and testing of the medical device. The way it is also helped to grow thanks to the healthcare sector is through hubs. We do have a multiplicity of technological hubs that are constituted with the academics, the scientists, the startups, the financial entities, and also the Ministry of Health in France or in Europe, allowing support and ongoing development of this very important sector in the European industry.
All right, thank you so much, Claire. I think that is some real good insights that you have provided, and it looks like as if even the French government is injecting a lot of money into the MedTech sector, and I think for Indian companies, I think France is a very good opportunity along with the other African and the American markets that we look at. So thank you for providing that. In fact, just to add to some of those things, in India as well, I think the Indian government is now investing and have recognized medical device as a separate sector. They are implementing changes from introducing, education courses for medical devices into education system. They are introducing some good R&D research parks as medical device parks. They're allocating some of good production-linked incentive schemes. So internationally as well, if companies. So in India, medical devices, 85% of medical devices in India are imported at this point in time. But the encouragement from the Indian government is that we start manufacturing some of these medical devices as make in India, right? And therefore, companies such as Dozy who are innovating and are coming up with some real high-end technology and class products. Indian government wants to also promote as much as possible. So I think overall, globally, I think this trend is upwards where medical device as a industry is being recognized. It is being separated from pharma industry earlier. I mean, to an extent, under Drugs and Cosmetic Act, devices are still defined under drugs. But I think that trend is changing. We already have a draft bill coming from medical devices. We had draft medical devices rules earlier. So I think overall in government, we can see the change. So from, heading from this part of the conversation, let me, initiate one of the key discussion topics in adoption of medical technologies in this sector. And I would like to bring in Claire, you again for the question. But before I bring you in, let me just give you some perspective of how, medical negligence is been looked upon in India. And especially with the MedTech industry. So as India as a market is really growing at a very accelerating pace. Medical technologies are growing even at a faster pace. So regulations are being developed as and when they come across an issue or they come across a challenge, and then they need to address that challenge. So you can say that we are running behind the industry innovation in terms of legislations and laws. But there are laws which are in place. Medical negligence is a real aspect where patients do have, do suffer at times, but you still cannot stop innovation. And the courts have recognized that you cannot put a knife to a surgeon's neck and ask him to practice, right? So you have to give doctors a free hand. Their error in judgment or medical knowledge cannot be challenged as medical negligence. So there have been a lot of case laws which also determine the fact that a doctor in his individual capacity has chosen an alternate method, but has taken a professional decision which adheres to reasonable standard of care, right? So then the medical negligence aspect will not be applicable in such cases. So what is happening that as and when the gap between wellness and patient care, right? Today, if you see, there are so many devices in India as well, where you use them as wearables. You could say smart watches, where or your Apple phone itself nowadays can give you an ECG whenever required. So the gap between wellness and patient care is reducing day by day, right? So the definition of what is considered a reasonable standard of care is something that needs to be considered over and over again by the courts when they are, giving their decisions with respect to medical negligence. So, there are multiple case laws where they've even said that an electronic device, if the electronic device does not operate because of electrical failure or technical failure, will that amount to medical negligence? There are judgments where courts have again considered, no, it cannot be because that is not in professional hands of a doctor of a technical failure, right? So with that aspect, what I would like, Claire, from you to understand that in France, how do you look at medical negligence as an issue? And probably, if you can give us an idea that because France is a developed country, and these issues are looked into more minutely, and the legislations are much more developed in terms of understanding these liabilities. If you could throw some of your insights, some of your knowledge about this, we'll be happy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and very happy to continue discussing the specificities of France. So it is true that the legal regime of medical negligence has been construed during the past 20, 25 years. It's a sort of a new area of tort law or of liability law, because it really evolved and developed around the years 2000. It evolved and developed because new laws were passed, and also because new settlement agencies were set up to offer compensation to patients when there is in fact no fault, but the risks associated with therapeutic protocols, with new drugs, or as we can say now, with new medical device, should not lie solely on the shoulders of the patients, but should be shared with the community. So what I can tell you in summary is that initially tort law or contract law in France required that you prove the existence of a fault. And it is very difficult for a judge to assess if a practitioner has well cured his patient or did not do what was expected from him. So in this regard, there had been some development of medical standard or medical state of the art. And we have seen in France development of health authorities, which now set, depending on the domain, some therapeutic protocols that are the criteria upon which a practitioner will be deemed by a court to have been negligent or not negligent. In addition to that, in addition to common contractual law or common tort law, 2000s saw the development of a new legal regime, which is a lack of safety. Lack of safety means that you do have a medical device that causes you a serious damage. It causes you a damage more important than the one you could expect. Then there is two possibilities. Either there is a fault because the medical device is defective, it is ill manufactured, ill designed, ill engineered. The manufacturing company is then liable. And with regard to Europe, would it be, for example, an Indian manufacturing company? It would either be the Indian manufacturing company because it is named on the packet as the manufacturer, or if it is not named, then it would be the importer or the distributor. And this distributor, importer, or manufacturer would be the sole responsible for the consequences of the defective medical device. But there is also the option where there is no fault. It's not a defect. It's just the adverse effect of the use of the medical device. Sometimes it can save a life, but sometimes it can also have an adverse effect like a drug. And the question was raised how to compensate these patients that suffered a serious damage, that even if they are cured, they suffered additional damage that must be compensated. And in these years of 2000, we also saw in France a new mechanism of liability without any fault, meaning that in these cases, we set up a national fund. This national fund works like an insurance. In cases where a patient suffers a great damage, just because it's the subsequent consequences of its treatment, it can be compensated by that national funds. It's neither the manufacturers nor the practitioners. It would be the collective community that would then indemnify the patient. So it means that now medical negligence is less judicial, less conflictual than it was at some point, because usually the patient that suffered a loss will find a way to be compensated, and notably will find a way to be compensated without the necessity to assess if there was a negligence or if there was no negligence, but will eventually benefit that national fund. So this is the state of the law now in France. And it means that it has about 20 years of experience, and it is quite set in stone, I would say, to offer protection to all the patients that would have a damage during their medical treatment.
Thank you, Claire. I think that's a very interesting idea to have a fund, of indemnifying these patients. Gaurav, would you want to react to this question? Because I know for a fact that we've been dabbling with this medical negligence aspect and adoption of the medical innovation. This has been one of the key concerns, what doctors generally present in India. And though Apex or the courts, the Supreme Court has been quite vocal about the liability quotient. But Gaurav, I would like to know a few things from you in terms of how are you facing this as a challenge, and when you were innovating and going through clinical trials for your products, what was your experience?
No, absolutely. So any new technology that comes up, right, or any new concept that comes up, for example, monitoring has always existed, but contactless monitoring, that too outside ICUs where it hasn't been done before, right? It always raises a few questions, and not just about monitoring, right? Any other technology will bring in a few questions. How does this change the medical liability or legal liability standpoint, right? And that is where we have been quite proactive at it. First establishing the best quality of standards, as Mudit mentioned, we're FDA cleared also now, licensed with CDSCO. And beyond that, we've conducted multiple clinical trials as well to showcase the accuracy and effectiveness of the product in different clinical settings, right? And covered them properly in our disclaimers and documentation. And educated the customers, the doctors, and the hospital administrators in the condition that it works and where are essentially they need to be kind of concerned about, or they couldn't use it. So having that complete disclosure with the clinical studies as well as certifications in place definitely gives one advantage, or let's say kind of confidence to these doctors and hospital administrators. On top of that, what we also have to look at it in this regard is also that in our case particularly, right, having facts always helps both parties, right? Whether it's the patients or the doctors, right? Having hardcore facts available and visible on the ground, right? With monitoring with DOSI, there is a clear digital trail of data that's been created, right? Which essentially is the first proof in itself that the patient was under continuous monitoring throughout, which wouldn't have been a case in a hospital without DOSI. Right. So that in itself is an advantage, that the standard of care is even higher. Second, even to prove to a court in terms of, or from a law perspective, that this data can also be admissible, stating these were the pathways. And as you very rightly mentioned in your beginning and description of this particular section, that the liabilities or the medical negligence does not potentially cover the the error in judgment or judgment basis that, okay, if this alert came, basis that do I need to take an intervention or not, is completely a call of a healthcare professional, basis their complete medical judgment, right? And an error in medical judgment should not be considered medical negligence. So overall, if you balance and if you look at the positive pros and cons, it's essentially creating a digital trail, which is much more kind of, let's say, accurate and reliable and robust in nature. At the same time, the data has been proven to be accurate, so it increases the standard of care by default. So, and overall, from a safety standpoint, we've followed all international global standards in terms of patient safety. In fact, the device is contactless, so it won't even touch the patient. Even beyond that, we've done all EMI, EMC, all sort of testing that is required from a global safety standpoint. So that in turn, this narrative plus the clinical tests, certifications, and the best global standards give us a good amount of confidence with hospital administrators, doctors in India, particularly where we've seen. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you for it. I think with all this discussion in place for with respect to medical liability, I think some of the key things that we can do in terms of awareness, what can say company or for the government side point of view, or even from consultancy point of view, like lawyers, in terms of supporting these innovative companies to reach on a different scale and a platform. What is the expectation, as a company? Gaurav, I'll just come back to you again, and probably then, I'll come to Claire, just to understand, how you can look at from the other side. So now you have a certain environment in which you're growing, what is your expectation, in terms of more support, more awareness, and what will help you really, accelerate your scaling?
Understood. So I think there are quite a lot of answers to this. So I will kind of try to keep it to as minimum as possible, but the most impactful points that I can identify. Right? I think any new technology or any new MedTech solution that comes up, right? The role of, let's say, third parties, when we talk about when by either they're government agencies or consulting agencies or lawyers or regulatory experts or whoever, right? For first-time founders, it's very difficult to navigate the healthcare regulatory ecosystem. What sort of rules are applicable? What is the classification of the device? What is the minimal pathway? And essentially not compromising the sanctity of the results or the tests or regulations or guidelines at all, but what is the least burdensome approach, as the FDA also puts it, to identify that pathway and work on that. I think there's a lot of help required in that regard. And seldom, I think the founders are left to figure this out themselves. I think early on, accelerators which are picking up already in the country for initial startups which are growing and building solutions, because I think, as Claire mentioned as well, the ecosystem for MedTech innovation and the gestation period is quite high. That it sometimes may take years also before you see your first dollar in revenue, right? So surviving till then, figuring out these accelerators where you can get access to costly equipment or bigger labs and all of those things where you might need to for your product or for your innovation, right? That sort of an infrastructure help may definitely help. Third, and the most important part from a government perspective, right? See, as India, as a country, right, we are going through multiple challenges, right? And not just in healthcare. But when we innovate for the world, right? So if I just take a parallel from the payments part, right? Today we have UPI, which is one of the world-class digital payment gateways, right? And multiple Western countries are also exploring it, and some of them are coming on it as well, right? Because the whole part of starting it was to provide access to the last mile person in a tier 2 or a tier 3 town, or even in a rural area as well, right? And cutting the middlemen out of it, right? Similarly, in healthcare also, right, we are going to face a lot of challenges, right? When we make in India, right, we make in India for India, automatically we cover the entire world because of the diversity of India. Today, in all of the states, with all of the different languages, different healthcare protocols being followed, different quality of infrastructure being available, different training and skill set of people in tier 1, tier 2, corporate or public hospitals, right? A solution that is solving for the entire ecosystem automatically entirely solves for the world as well, right? If you solve for the hardest, the easier should be able to come through. No offense to the problems of the Western world as well, but we have a lot of problems on our own. So that is essentially where the biggest part that the government can play in co-development is where acting as our first customer as well, right? Trying it out themselves, because our public hospitals are the ones that require the most amount of technology intervention. They are some of the worst when it comes to metrics, when it nurse to patient ratios, doctor to patient ratios, ICU beds to non-ICU bed ratios. So that is exactly where majority of these solutions, and not just monitoring, but I'm sure other imaging startups or diagnostic startups or genetics, right? They can really, really help. And that is where government adopting the solution, obviously after further exploration and all of those things, right? But they have to be sure whether the solution is accurate or not and actually solving the problem or not. But once they do that, effective and very easy ways to work with the government, reducing that barriers for us to commercially engage with different state governments, actually going through and actually preferring Make in India startups, right? Which is where all countries do have that, right? Everybody promotes their home companies and home products first, right? We essentially need that in healthcare. You made a very excellent point with 85% of medical devices being imported in India. That will only change if we change first manufacturing and start adopting it, right? So government as a customer can play a large role, apart from the infrastructure help, guidance, and regulatory help, as we spoke about.
Thank you, Gaurav, so much. Claire, I know I'm going to ask you the same question in terms of what is your expectation? In how do they encourage industry? One, for companies to come and set up in France, or who intend to have France as a market where they can come in. And second, what is the expectation of the French companies in terms of their support from the
Okay, so it is quite set that the European and French markets are big markets for the medical device and generally for the life science sector. But the difficulty is when you try to put a foot in the United States market is the regulation, which is very important and very specific. So the experience shows that usually foreign companies will try to either set their products in Europe or in the United States in order to go to the other markets, because they will have experienced the caveats of many regulations to follow. As I said earlier, regulation to be complied with is really something difficult to overcome. And mainly the price regulation, because startups need at some point to get revenues, and revenues will very much depend on the pricing, the price at which they will be able to market their medical device. And this price, as it is yet set today, is usually given with ratios that are, set by the law. And these ratios put as the main and first element the improvement in the therapy, the improvement in the cure of the illness. And there has been discussion to say, well, medical device now do not necessarily help the cure of the illness, but rather improve either the life standard of the patients, or could improve the costs of the patient. If we see connected watch, for example, there has been examples during the COVID of many patients that could not go to the hospital anymore because they could not, be transported. They could not move, and they were equipped with connected watch that enabled them to secure their blood ratio, heartbeat ratio, several indicators, health indicators that were connected with the doctor, and allowed the doctor to tell when and if that patient needed to go to the hospital. So it is said that these types of medical device would help reduce the overall costs of a patient treatment if they reduce the number of visits to the doctor, for example, or if they help avoid unnecessary visit to the urgency department of a hospital. So discussion has been going on to try to modify the criteria taken into account when pricing a medical device, to be able to also take into account these new elements that are authorized thanks to medical device, like the life status of a patient or the overall impact on the economy sector. So these are some new elements that are discussed in Europe and especially in France. So I think there's quite, new developments to come on. It's quite a new era with the development of MedTech and also artificial intelligence help through medicine. So we'll need to see a little bit what happened next, but everything is moving quite forward.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think lot of questions, which we intended for the part A and part B of the conversation, we have, discussed most of them. We have two poll questions which were, running parallel to the conversation we were having, with the attendees. So the first poll question was, do you think the use of wearable portable medical devices like pulse oximeters or, your wearable watches, etc., has substantially increased post-COVID, COVID-19? So surprisingly, we have 97% people agreeing to it. And I'm not sure who are the 3% people who don't think it is the truth. But I'll like to bring in panelists on this, who can probably, react to some of this, because this is exactly what we are trying to say, that the gap between patient care and wellness is reducing, right? So general people are, people are now using these devices on a very regular basis, and this is going to more and more increase, right? Because longevity of life, has become extremely important. So maybe just few lines, not like a substantial answer, but just sort of a reaction. I think, maybe, Prashad, do you want to react to this poll question, in a very small way, and then probably, Claire and then Gaurav can take it up. Prashad, you're on mute.
Sorry. I think Gaurav would be answering it most appropriately. Why this is and why does he see the market becoming larger and larger? But yes, from the government's perspective, I think the government is very serious. There is already a draft national policy for medical devices. Quite clearly, that has considered many things with regard to simplification of regulatory process. So I'm answering the second poll question, which I think 2030, definitely the size of the market. We've seen the two challenges. At least one of the challenges expressed by the panelists is the kind of doctor-patient ratio you cannot manage without having technology on your side. As Claire mentioned, AI, we have to see AI is already threatening the lawyers, so but doctors can't be too far, can they? So no, but on on a more serious note, I think all this technology is definitely going to reduce some of the challenges in our country. And I think the more the government recognizes the effort of R&D, recognizes our great ecosystem on the startups, and their ability to be able to leverage not only in India, but across the world. We are seeing success of DOSI more and more, and it is very heartening to see that. A startup, indigenous technology, which is being now being recognized worldwide. And so, yeah, it makes a huge, I think there is, at least to the second poll question, I would be on the 97% side, believing that India should be 2030 one of the leaders in medical device, in the manufacturing and creating new technologies.
Sure. Thank you so much, Prashad. I think we can ask Claire if you want to react to that. Anyone from the panel is welcome to react to these questions, because I think they're pretty one-sided as a what everyone thinks in terms of. I'm not sure who are these 6% people who don't think India is going to be a MedTech hub. We'll have to find them out for sure. But I think it's a very one-sided poll on both the questions. But just some of your reactions, and probably then we can go to the closure of this one.
No, I can react very easily. And I am also on the board of the 99%. I think that the life science sector and medical device manufacturing, drug companies it's a sector that is international by essence, having parts of the world playing different roles. But it is sure that the big companies are manufacturing in certain countries, having their clinical trials in others, marketing in initial territories to then, to then grow up the market in other countries of the world. So it cannot really be anything else than a general global and international market, with India playing a very big part already and seeing its part growing, I think, in the business of the life science sector.
Thank you. Gaurav, Suhas sir, would you like to react to it? And then,
Yeah, I would like to add here that Reserve Bank of India, with the government support, is coming out with simplification of regulatory practices and regulatory processes. In August 22, they simplified overseas investment regime. And right now they are working on the export and import guidelines, export and import. I like to share one incident which is indicating what RBI is thinking. Every year, RBI conducts FRI, the bankers conference every year. And in the conference, they clarify on the FEMA queries and FEMA doubts, foreign exchange doubts. This time on 16 November, the conference was held. It was a reverse position where panelists were bankers and moderators were RBI officers. And RBI officer asked panel to the trade panel question, what is the reaction?
Hello.
yes, sir.
I think we lost.
I think we've lost him. I mean, in the sense, we've just got him disconnected.
Yeah.
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 Yes, can you hear me?
Now we
Yes.
can.
yes,
We
we
can
can
hear
hear you now.
I was saying,
Oops. There we go again.
I think we've lost him again, disconnected. So I think I'll just take the time and summarize my points also to this. I think the first question, I definitely agree. There is a greater awareness post-COVID. One of the greatest awareness was everybody's buying a sanitizer now, right? Medical devices obviously are there. Pulse oxygen saturation, BP measurement devices, right? All of these have taken up. There is a lot more awareness in the ecosystem now, even the consumers and the end stage consumers. But I think this is kind of a reaction where a lot of these wellness devices are picking up, but they do not have the medical grade capability to them, right? So that is exactly where India, being more of a KOL-led, which is essentially a doctor-led market, right? Self-management is not something we prefer to do, right? And in some cases, very rightly so. We prefer to get our medical advice from a doctor themselves, right? And they are very careful about where is the data coming from? Is it medical grade? Is it not medical grade? Is it registered in a proper manner or not? And then only they're consuming that data. So I think this sector will evolve, and I think it will evolve in the right direction. Obviously, when there's a big change, there are small flux that happens, and I think this is a part of that for sure. On the second part, I completely agree. I think that's my bread and butter, so I have to believe it for sure. But I feel India not just will be a big MedTech hub for manufacturing and making new MedTech solutions, but also a big market for the same as well, right? Our healthcare industry is growing at a stunning 22% CAGR, right? We are adding I mentioned today we are at 2 million hospital beds. In 5 years, both public and private sectors have committed that there will be 4 million, right? So as a consumer, the appetite of the Indian market is increasing as well. So we will attract, as we've always been attracting overseas companies to India. But I think it's a high time now that we make solutions for ourselves, because these companies don't make solutions for India, right? And our diversity and our challenges. So when we do this for India, we do this for the world. And I think a current theme will be Make in India for India, which automatically satisfies the world, right? I think entrepreneurs focusing on that, I think, will succeed. Just an export-ready product, I don't think is something that we would be kind of looking at. Any company would be looking at something, because as I said, this is our home. The market appetite is increasing amazingly well. This is probably the best time to be in the healthcare industry. and a lot of limelight and focus is on it for right reasons this time.
Definitely, definitely. I think I completely agree with everyone, who's reacted to these four questions. I am also definitely on the 99% of the poll questions. So with this, I want to thank each and everyone. I want to.
I think if Suhas
Yeah.
we can get him back, maybe we can hear last. So
I can hear you.
We lost you at the panel, Suhas.
Yeah.
So what I was saying that this year authorized the conference, RBI didn't make any presentation on FEMA. There were 4 panelists of bankers, and RBI officers were moderating questions to bankers. And the first question on the trade panel: what is the reaction of bankers if RBI scrap import-export guidance entirely and make it liberal? And why this question was asked, the reason being, right now they are rewriting the import-export guidelines, and by mid of the next year, what happened with ODI, similar thing you can look at for export-import. A lot of simplification will be there. It will be ease of doing business, and that is what government and RBI are looking at.
Very nice.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Suhasa. Thank you so much. I think with this, we sort of end this discussion on webinar. And I really want to thank you on behalf of Link Legal. Thank you, Gaurav, for making this time. And I think you can also say thanks to Mudit, that he removed this time from the important meetings that you're in. Thank you, Claire. A really great support from you, and so much to learn on what is happening in the European side, and really great insights. I'm sure Gaurav would have also appreciated some of those in terms of when Gaurav thinks about France as an expansion market. And Gaurav, now you know whom to reach out to, right? So I think that's a very good way of collaborating together probably, and also understanding how we can all do good business internationally. Suhas sir definitely has given us a lot of insight in terms of how RBI is looking into things, how banks are helping out, what are the regulatory frameworks, should you go from a branch office or a subsidiary, what are the nuances surrounding it. And definitely, if you, in terms of those, if you require any legal help, we are always there. I really want to thank Nusrat, for supporting, and he's a great support in terms of attending, so much experience, 30 years of knowledge, and giving us this time for this discussion as well. So overall, I am very happy. We have initiated and kickstarted this webinar series with a bang. We had a very good poll and some very exciting audience who have attended this. So thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.